Hey everyone. Sadly today the news broke that longtime friend and just overall friend of the hunting community, Todd Pringnitz, had passed away. Todd had been involved in a serious ATV accident a week ago and just had not recovered. There was some brain trauma, and sadly today at 3:16 a.m. he had passed away. Todd was a wealth of knowledge when it came to whitetail hunting, and he was really ahead of the curve and one of the smartest whitetail hunters I had ever spoke to. Todd was lucky enough to spend a ton of time out in the field hunting, and that's what gave him his edge. He was super smart, and he took that data from being out in the field all the time and turned it into success. Todd was a legitimate big buck killer. It was always a pleasure to talk with him and hang out with him, and just privileged to be his friend. I think we've known each other since 04, 05, and started working together in some form with White Knuckle Productions in 2006 and 7. So I wanted to run back an episode with Todd and the Tree Thrasher company that he had just started, and just from this episode you can tell Todd's knowledge and how enthused he was about hunting whitetail and big bucks, and just a tribute to Todd. There's also a benefit dinner coming up this weekend at the Iowa Deer Classic, or the Iowa Big Buck Classic, so I'll be sure to include that link to that. If anybody wants to donate, just click on the link in the show notes and you'll be able to do so. But hope you guys enjoy the show with Todd. It's legitimately a tribute to him, and just being such a huge part of the hunting industry and community. And God bless your soul, Todd. We're going to miss you. You were one of the good ones. All right, boys and girls, welcome back. Brand new Take Aim podcast. And once again with me is Todd Pringnitz. We've had Todd on the show before, but Todd from White Knuckle Productions and now the Tree Thrasher. So what's up, Todd? Glad to have you here today.
Awesome, dude. Awesome. We're getting some beautiful rain here in Iowa, and man, after the summer, we need it so badly. So any day that's rainy and cloudy here, I feel like happy, which is the opposite of most humans, I think.
Man, I know. I'm super, super excited. I now have a lease about maybe 40 miles from you, Todd, in Missouri, and just super excited to hear about rain. We've had rain kind of, even here in Michigan, on and off. You always get nervous, but we've had showers almost real steady lately, so it's been nice to get some rain. But Missouri, you guys were having droughts up there in Iowa, and like I said, I'm only 40 miles maybe from you, so super excited that we've been getting that rain and kind of just not having to get so worried about EHD.
Oh, you do? Oh, right on, dude. What town are you near, I guess?
So I'm in Cahokia, Missouri, which would be just west, maybe 15 miles from Keokuk, Iowa. And if the way the crow flies, we're pretty close north, we would be like maybe 3 to 5 miles just below the state line of Iowa.
Oh my gosh, you're close, brother. That's almost in Iowa.
Yeah, man. So I've been feeling the same thing you've been feeling about the rain. I'm always checking it on my app. But yeah, it's a great area. Looks a lot like Iowa, and I was real fortunate to shoot a nice deer there last year on that farm.
Oh, wow, cool. Is it your first year down there?
No. Second year down there. Last year was the first season, so I was real fortunate. Shot a really big, giant old deer 8-pointer with big, giant brows. But just getting still to learn that farm, but really enjoy it, and looking forward to this year.
Yeah, buddy. Well, we got it finally. So now we're hopefully we're getting out of that EHD scare. I found 5 so far, dead buck or dead deer, most small ones actually compared to, sometimes you get your older population, but yeah, man, hopefully we haven't gotten too wiped out, but this should at least save us in the short term. So
yeah, same here. I always worry that I'm going to get what I've heard from Bill Winkie occasionally, Mark Jury occasionally, that you're going to find some of these deer dead in October. I don't know about you, Todd, but I've never found that. Usually all my deer, they're dead in August or September, and sometimes I'll find them later in the year, but I know usually it's early. All my farms seems to be the same. They always die off around August.
Yeah, I've seen them. The only other time we had EHG maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, and it was kind of spotty. There weren't too many deer, but I didn't actually find anything until hunting season when I started going out to my stands. But that was the same case. It was late August, early September, so they'd actually just shed. So the bucks I was finding dead had real pointy racks, but thankfully we've been hopefully saved. We gotten about 7 or 8 inches in the last couple weeks. So that's awesome when you've got some new food plots in the ground coming up. It's right now it's just been a savior. So it's so nice to see everything green again. It's been a brown summer.
No, you can't. I'm so glad that hopefully this is over, and there's nothing worse than planning on having a lease out of state and, trying to travel. It's a lot of work, a lot of effort, and a lot of money, and you travel somewhere and you end up with EHD. It's happened to me 3 times, so it's a pain. I'm glad we're just about out of that scare, or I feel like we're out of that scare now, and we can move on.
I know. Sometimes you can't catch a break. Heck yeah, buddy. Heck yeah.
But anyways, I know I just saw, I think White Knuckle or you, or both your pages, I don't remember, but posted a really great buck on trail camera.
Oh yeah, that's one of Donnie Monroe's bucks. I think he's calling it Pinhead or something. But dude, oh my gosh, is that a big deer? He sent me pictures of it last night, and I'm like, I'm not even gonna tell you how big that thing is. It's absolutely, dude. It's got like a 9-inch drop time too. Oh, it's a dandy. I think Kansas is kind of turning into the new Iowa, or at least the potential is just, oh my gosh, so good there. He's got such a killer area. He's got, oh my Lord, a bunch of nice bucks that I wish I had on trail camera. But here I just don't get the number of big bucks. I guess I get a sporadic huge deer every once in a while, and then those are the ones I go after. But I don't get too many trail cam picks until we get closer to October, because we just have too vast of areas here, and they just live in different areas. And then once the food starts dwindling and the crops start coming out, then they start getting forced into certain areas, and I take advantage of that, brother.
Yeah, holy cow, man. I've noticed a big difference. Even Illinois, Nebraska, when I've had trail camera, especially Missouri, that you just don't seem to get those deer on trail camera very much in the summer. And that, food's abundant, they're in cover, they just don't have to move far, but nonetheless, it makes you just really kind of freak out a little bit.
Yeah, I used to freak out in the summer when I first moved down here. I was on a mission to get trail cam pics, and I think a lot of it was just for marketing purposes, just to be able to have some content to put online and stuff for White Knuckle, and I used to run cameras, oh my gosh, all over the territories, and now I just don't care, to be honest, because I know through past experience where they're going to be at different times, and I'd rather spend my time spinning my wheels in other ways that will help me, come fall, and as opposed to just trying to get trail camera pictures. But if you're hunting in a new area, there's not really a better way, to find out what's around, and that's half the battle. So I'm just fortunate here. I've been hunting the same area now for a while, and now I just I know when and where they're going to show up if they're gonna. But it's a little nerve wracking when you're like placing your bets on one deer or something, and you don't even know if he's around yet. But hey, the same situation last year with Walter Payton, and that worked out, so I'll take it.
Yeah, for sure. The same here. Like I don't get to do food plots or anything like that. My farmers use all the ground, so I've always just late summer, ran minerals for health and inventory, more or less. I know that if I get 4 or 5 bucks on a camera, or 6, one might stay on my farm and he's a year older, and I might be able to go back, look at trail camera photos, figure out who he is. So it's important in that manner. But I mean, I don't hunt anywhere near them, and we both know that after Labor Day, deer aren't on the minerals anyways. But not sure if you guys can use mineral in Iowa, Todd, or not.
We can. I just choose not to, because there's, man, you've seen some of the guys get busted. And just the way Iowa's laws are written, there's a gray area where there's not really a specific, distance that you can hunt to these things. And I just don't really, I don't want the negative attention. And to me, again, I don't, it doesn't outweigh the, to me, I just don't want to deal with it and deal with anybody, having any sort of a negative or saying that I was hunting anywhere near one or whatever. I just don't hunt around them. Don't use them. Don't really, it's not a huge part of my factor, I guess, going into the season. I just rely on scrapes. primarily scrapes and food plots. In the fall is when I get all my pictures. That's when everything moves in around those food plots, but which makes it way easier on my end. And not everybody has that luxury, but you just got to work a little bit harder to get your pictures and figure out where deer are. But yeah, I think just with age and experience, your season changes, but for anybody who enjoys getting the pictures and running trail cameras, then go for it. That's the beauty of it. I think you got to enjoy your properties and enjoy your season too. And if you're so worried about making a noise or stepping foot on your property, sometimes that goes against what the whole point is, right? Which is to have fun.
Yeah, exactly. Like I was saying, it just gives me an opportunity, since I don't get that enjoyment of tearing up soil, doing the food plot deal, that I get to engage this way. In my mind, the vitamins and minerals makes them healthier, even the does and fawns, and those are your bucks the next couple of years. So just something I like to do, but I don't get near them during hunting season. It's a waste of time, and we all know that they're changing habits, and summertime is just so rough because they're doing their own things.
Yeah, not in the summer. Summer, they're just a little bit, just usually off and doing their own thing in their own areas, different areas, because the food's so plentiful everywhere. But this year it's been a little bit odd too. The number of pictures and bucks I've been getting on camera are way down just because it was so dry. So all the secondary water sources, all your small creeks and inside your ravines and draws that usually have little pools of water and stuff, everything had dried out. So that basically means a deer can only live in a specific spot closest to water. So that, unfortunately, is not too close to any of where my hunting ground is, which is mostly around the farm fields and timber and stuff. So yeah, it definitely changed the season here in the summer. But that's whitetail hunting. You just got to adapt and figure out, okay, with that dry of a season, the crops aren't nearly as good as they should be, and a lot of the browse is gone. So that's where now I got some green plots coming up that are going to be absolutely hammered because these deer are just going to be starving for that green, delicious nutrition.
Do you put cameras anywhere, like on creeks or ponds you have on the property?
I definitely have. Here, I mean, usually we're a little bit more protected from EHD because we have a beautiful creek. It's about the size of a river. It's a small river, basically. But it's, ankle to waist deep, depending on what time of year and how much rain we've had. But it wraps pretty much all the way around through my property. And then beyond that, there's about, let's just say in a 500-acre area all around here, there's probably a half dozen or more ponds. So there's ponds and then that creek that runs through everything. So we don't really get situations where we've got one watering hole or one water source that is just getting absolutely hammered so you could actually hunt it or anything. So that's not a situation, but the way I use the water is just for access, just to be able to get in that creek and use the waterways, to access stands and stuff in a way that no human beings have ever done before. And that's where I've been able to really take advantage of and use my, the waterways and whatnot to the best of my abilities.
Yeah, super fortunate. I know that last year I got to go scout some public ground out in Iowa. I was just amazed at the creeks, man. They're like you were just saying, they're as big as rivers, and the only thing that separates that in a river is just the depth. I mean, a lot of it's 6 or 8 inches or just skims, like just a little bit of water. But man, I was just so pumped because I just fantasized like how easy and great it is to access. I mean, that's how my mind worked. Like, oh my gosh, you could just do so much with these creeks.
Yeah, I'm fortunate here, just the way everything lays out in the properties that I hunt. I have access from all directions, and that is such a critical aspect of my success, is that you slowly realize, like, all right, you're getting all these pictures of these bucks. And I really started learning a lot when I started putting soaker cameras in my best areas. After I'd get shoot a buck and it'd take a little pressure off and be like, I want to see what I can learn, about some of my hunting areas. And so I'd go set cameras up way up in the tree, 10 feet up off the ground, and just leave them for the whole season, for the rut and then all the way through to January. Usually is when I'd pull them around shed season. And I started pulling those cameras, and I'd be like, blown away at how I'd see these big mature deer, the ones I was hunting, in those areas. But when I hunted in those spots, I never would see a mature deer. And I just, I was like, something's got to be going on with this. So then I really started looking at where the deer were bedding, where they were access, or how I was accessing, and I kind of started putting two and two together. Like, yeah. Turns out the last two guys who owned this property were hunting the same spot. They were hunting it, coming in the same way, and so I just started like, all right, how do I fix that? How do I reverse the situation? So I just started kind of changing my patterns around what I knew the deer had me nailed at, and taking advantage of that, and then just coming in different directions, adjusting my stand locations just slightly. In some cases, just 20, 30 yards made all the difference. And then, the last few years, I've really, really gotten into stalking into my stands, especially in afternoons when it's daylight and you can visually see. I really, really, really enjoy it now, of taking my time, and sometimes I take 15, 20 minutes all the way up to a half an hour to go 100 yards, depending on where the stands are located and how sensitive of an area. But I can get to my stand and climb up and have deer bedded within 10 to 15 yards. That's how quiet I go in. And I use the terrain, use the conditions of the time, whether it's rained or the leaves are noisy or not. And then also wind. We get a lot of wind here. So I use those windy days to access some of my most sensitive areas, because you just got it hides your motion, and it hides your sound so much better.
Oh, I couldn't agree more about the wind. It gives you such an opportunity to go a little bit deeper in some of your sets, and sneak right up there in some of the areas that just seem to be extra noisy. Maybe a lot more timber has fallen, but man, it definitely covers your tracks, which you can't beat that.
The other thing I've noticed, Brandon, too, with the wind is, as hunters, we don't like the wind. We think deer don't like the wind. But in fact, I usually have some of my best hunts when we have strong winds here. And I believe it has to do with how it holds the scent molecules together. If you could just imagine a stream, if you've got a rushing stream, that water is going from point A to point B very quickly. So if you imagine what air and scent does, the longer your scent or a scent molecule is in open air oxygen, it basically starts to mix with the other oxygen, and you lose your parts per million. So it doesn't become as strong. But when the wind is blowing strong, it keeps all those molecules tightly packed together, so to speak. So it's a higher concentration of parts per million, your scent in just the stagnant air. The stronger the wind, the better a whitetail can smell. It allows them to know, it gets to their noses faster, so the molecules stay closer together, it gets to their nose faster. They can smell scent so much better when it's windy. That's why I think you see the movement. They just feel more comfortable moving, because their nose becomes more powerful to them, and they can really, truly smell for a longer distance. And on those stagnant, dead days, those dead afternoons where there's just zero wind, those are some of my slower hunts, and I believe it just has to do with, it'd be like putting honestly a pair of blinders on and walking around the woods, without your eyesight, because to a whitetail, that's how their nose is. So that's just something I've learned. I absolutely love the windy days now.
No, I've noticed. I mean, you can count everything into it, even a high pressure day. If it's 5 miles or below, I'm not seeing the deer movement. Maybe a fawn or two, maybe a doe, but not very, very much deer, compared to when, I don't have an exact number, but I really think that somewhere between 10 up to 17 miles an hour, maybe even 20, even though I don't like it, but the deer seem to like it so much more. They can just do a lot with that.
Sure. I think they feel vulnerable with noise too. And, we're going to talk about tree thrasher here in a little bit, but that's a huge factor as well. If you're trying to move around the woods and not have your presence be known, if it's really dry and it's completely dead calm, you can't move 10 feet without sounding like a train wreck going through the woods. And I don't, during the rut, there's so many different variables and stuff with what's been going on. But yeah, I'll take windy days, and just some of the nastiest, crappiest weather days are the days where I, see the most movement and stuff. The days that you, as a hunter, you think you don't want, but sure enough, over the years, those are the days I killed big bucks on.
No, I'm really a big believer in that. I mean, as much as I love a nice fall day in November with a high barometer, there's also those days where it's misty and nasty and that rain, and there's a lot of deer activity. And yeah, we're going to talk about the tree thrasher right now. And I know one thing that, throughout the years that I've known Todd, he doesn't do anything that is not going to be productive, that's not going to help his odds in the field. And Todd's never come out with a product or anything like that just doesn't help our odds. Todd's very serious about his deer hunting, and if it doesn't work, Todd does not use it.
Well, thanks, man. Whitetails are my life, and if there's something that isn't, that doesn't work, or if there's a tool that isn't available, I've kind of over the years designed and developed my own, for my own system of hunting. And one of the things I've just come to the conclusion of, I like to call, and I've developed a system for calling that really, really works on pressured whitetails, because I've got a ton of neighbors around here. I've got probably 20 bow hunters within a mile of my farm here. But we do have a really nice age class of deer in the cover that, can hold and secure them. But I just, for most of my hunting career, up until about 5 years ago, I used to rattle, a little bit, not a ton, but during the rut, man, it was just what you do. You always carry your antlers and you rattle a couple times, and, hey, man, it's fun. And trust me, we all get the same feeling when we bang antlers together. There is just something about it. It's just fun to do. You're bored, you're cold. I'm going to try to make things happen. But what we don't consider is the reality of rattling and big buck fights is this. They're very rare, in fact. I've been hunting 30 years now. In the last 15, I've been hunting full-time in Iowa, meaning pretty much every day of the season. And I've only heard one big buck fight in the timber where it was so unbelievably loud at first. We were actually filming. It was years ago. I forget what video, but I think Full Circle maybe. But we were filming. We had a buck bedded by us. We were filming, and a fight broke out next to us in the timber. We couldn't see the bucks fight, but my God, I thought, what is my neighbor, dude? Is he driving his truck through the woods? It just sounded unlike anything I'd ever heard. Just crashing trees, breaking branches, the sounds of leaves, and just sounded like trees were getting run over. And we could hear just every once in a while, you could hear a click of antlers, but all the thrashing noise, we had deer literally just come running from all directions. And I was just dumbfounded at, holy cow, when it's a real fight, those deer know it. And my God, do they come running in. And then you're up there with your antlers trying to create that, and there's just no way you can do that. So I kind of just came to the conclusion when I was rattling, I wasn't seeing the ghost bucks and the big mature bucks that I had on my trail cameras. And so about 5 years ago, I made myself just stop carrying my rattling antlers, because I figured I think I would be doing better without them. And if I carry them, I am more apt to use them. You talk yourself into it, at the end of a long hunt. Oh, I'm going to see if I can just call one in. But the thing you don't realize is these deer, they carry that information on them year after year. So even if you're just, it's the end of my set, I'm gonna just rattle the antlers together. You're sending that message 200-300 yards, maybe even more on quiet days, that you're a hunter. Basically, you sound like a hunter. The rattling antlers don't sound real. And the more you do that year after year after year, these deer, they just become accustomed to it, and they just adapt and they change their patterns around it. And I'm a huge believer in deer learning from the deer they hang around with, and it's not just their experience in their lifetime. The first year of their life, they're living with their mother and their mom. They're following their doe mom around the timber. They're learning where mom likes to eat, what she likes to eat, where she likes to drink, where she likes to stay safe. And they just imitate her. They imitate her actions. When the first times they see a human and she runs with flags, snorts or whatever, then, they learn that. So not only are they learning from their mother, but once a buck starts hanging out in a bachelor group, they're learning from the other bucks that are in that group, specifically the dominant bucks. The younger ones watch the dominant bucks and will, again, imitate them, imitate where they go into the fields, how they act, different things. So by the time a whitetail gets to 5, 6, 7 years old, it's already gone through gauntlet after gauntlet after gauntlet, season after season after season. If it was going to be callable like any other hunter calls, it would have died as a 2 or 3 year old, or maybe a 4-year-old, because it would already have come into those calls. So if it makes it to that 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old range, do you think one day it's just going to wake up and all of a sudden be callable? It's like, dude, you're fooling yourself. You've got to change your approach if you want to kill those deer that nobody else is killing. And so I developed a system where I basically was just grunting about one time every 20 to 30 minutes, never multiple times in a row, because it's just not natural unless a deer is running through the woods or moving. That's when you'll hear them grunt multiple times, but they never stand in a single location and just grunt over and over. And so I just have started to change my system around what I was observing and listening to in the wild based on my hunting experience and watching what actual animals were doing, and not duplicating or imitating what I saw hunters doing. And I think a lot of us, we all grew up watching these shows, right? What do? They do the same kind of calling. A lot of times, they're sponsored and stuff like that. So, they got to pay their bills. That's fine. But I just kind of came to the conclusion that I was much better off and just started seeing results just by doing a single grunt and trying to always change it up and never make the same grunt twice. So I have a grunt tube, but I also use my mouth quite often. So I'll do a grunt tube in one direction as my one grunt, and then 20, 30 minutes later, I'd grunt with my mouth in a different direction. Try to literally make each grunt sound unique in a different direction so that if any deer are bedded within, hearing distance, which is the goal, they aren't going to become wise that you're a hunter because you sound like a deer. So I've called a lot of these big bucks out of their beds with this less is more philosophy, and by just not sounding like any of my neighbors. And I mean, I've sat and listened to my neighbors calling and realized, oh my Lord, now I know why rattling doesn't work and why these deer are so spooky. So my grunting system worked, but I was still missing something in it. I sat on the edge of these bedding areas knowing, man, there could be a buck bedded right in there, and your hunt's going by and it's getting dark later and later and prime time's coming up, prime time starts to leave. And I feel like I'm sitting on my hands because I've got no other options. If I use my rattling antlers, I'm going to blow it. If I try to use any other types of calls, I'm going to blow it because they're just not natural. And so all this while in the back of my mind, I'm thinking to myself, man, the one thing that's missing from my calling, and you've thought the same thing, especially on dry days, is like, you can't move in this timber without making noise, but yet you're gonna call and grunt, right? And it's just, it's been so hard. So I came to this idea. What really tipped me over the edge was I was hunting rusty nail years ago. And Kyle and I were set up right out of his bedding area, and we heard a absolute ruckus coming from in the middle of this thicket. And at first, again, I didn't know what it was because it sounded so loud. I mean, it was just like somebody was in there. I thought somebody was trimming a tree stand because that's what it sounded like, just, breaking branches and smashing trees. And I sat there and I'm thinking, and I start looking at Kyle, and we're sitting next to a CRP field. So as this is going on, we're watching deer out in the CRP field start coming toward that sound, does and stuff. And I'm just like, that's a freaking buck in there making that noise. And then I'm like, all right, that's got to be the dominant deer. I'm like, I bet you that's a rusty nail. So I ended up killing him just adjacent to that spot, so I know it was him. And I had the same thing happen with a different buck, a buck I'm actually still hunting, DL, where I sat and I listened to these deer make these noises, and I'm like, that is a blatant effort for them deer to be heard and to send that signal around that, hey, I'm here. This is my territory. Ladies, if you want to come party. Boys, you want to fight? Bring it, And it was clearly communication, and it just wore at me, dude, for like 3 years. Drove me freaking nuts. How in the heck could a hunter duplicate those sounds that attract does? It was clearly communication that deer wanted to be around, and it also sends a message, I believe. The coast is clear, because you think about if you're a big dominant buck making all this loud noises, you're doing it in areas that you feel very comfortable and safe. And the other deer, they hear the same sounds and think the same thing. Oh, it must be safe over there. So it just becomes a social networking area then, and the deer are attracted to that. So in the last 3 years, dude, I've slept very little. I'll put it that way.
No, all of that is so true, and I've always thought that throughout the years. And even, doesn't matter if you just bring a grunt call or just bring rattling antlers, or they can. I've had a situation where I call very minimal now. And, I had a situation where I used the can 2015 on a great Michigan buck I killed. And it was situational because he was moving. He was on the other side of the thicket. He couldn't see me. And he was making noise. And he was grunting. And he was moving. I mean, he was really moving fast. So that gave me the opportunity, hit that can. With all that ruckus going on, the situation just played perfect that he came around that thicket, came to work a scrape inside the timber, and luckily I got an arrow in him at 30 yards.
And Brandon, what you just mentioned the first. I want to just I want to say, guys, whatever your goals are out there, focus on what makes you happy, and what your goals are. I don't want to tell anybody not to rattle or not to do this, because rattling might work in your area. You might not have the pressure I do, but I sat in one week on my new property here. I just bought. I'm thinking, oh man, I'm in the spot. I'm gonna kill some huge deer, and I sat and listened to 3 different neighbors use can calls, grunt tubes, and rattle bags every 15 minutes for 3 hours at a time. And that's when I realized, like, okay, first and foremost, in order to kill these. Oh, well, dude, first you gotta not sound like a hunter before you can sound like a deer, right? So that's when I'm like, all right, I ain't gonna be using no can calls. I ain't gonna be using no serious rattling sequences. And so, there's different situations where things will work. And boy, tell a guy who has rattled in a deer or can called in a deer that it doesn't work. Well, of course not. I've rattled to some nice bucks and killed them in over the years as well, but they were always in areas that were just not pressured and had zero human intrusion, where you just caught them for the first time and you could dupe them basically. So every calling is a thing, that's very, very individual, but how the tree thrasher came to be was I knew I wanted a tool that I could really, really control what sounds I made, almost like an instrument. And I knew you needed to make the sounds of rustling leaves, thrashing leaves, the sounds of breaking branches, and clicks of branches basically on antlers, and man beams even, and then the sounds of a buck actually rubbing on a tree itself. So those 3 sounds were important. The hard part was trying to figure out a way to make it portable and make it simple. And oh my Lord, I racked my brain, and it was the toughest development project I've ever worked on, and I've done a bunch. And it took me years to get it. And I finally have a system and a product that I'm really, really proud of that has all the right sounds, but it still weighs like 4.3 ounces. And it's super light. It's super small. It's about the size of a turkey pot call or a slate call.
For one, I'm one of those guys always excited to get rid of stuff I don't need, especially if I don't need like rattling antlers or anything with weight. But I know I haven't seen the tree thrasher up close, but I was just assuming it basically was the size of kind of the circumference of a softball.
Yeah, and it basically fits in the palm of your hand. You can put it in your pocket, but it's just super small. And I've got one sitting at my desk here. So this is like, if you want to make the sound of like a deer walking or stomping, and then if you actually take the tool and go side to side, that kind of more duplicates the sound of a buck thrashing leaves. And then the last sound is the sound of the breaking branch, and that's basically a spring-loaded lever that connects and hits a little wooden insert on the tool, and allows you to make a variety of different noises. But just like my grunt calling techniques, the way I use the tree thrasher is not crazy aggressive. I try to duplicate what a real buck does, and I've watched, not only have I watched in person, but I've had the pleasure and the luxury of being able to go back and review all these encounters, not only of my own, but all of our team members for 15 years or 12 years now, give or take. And being able to watch that behavior over and over again all over the world, or not all over the world, all over the country, basically, all these different bucks, you just start to see patterns. And when a buck makes a scrape or a rub or thrashes a tree, they usually are only making noise for 10 to 15 seconds tops before they pause. And they want to make noise, but then they want to stop, they want to look, and they want to listen. And it's not only for predators, but it's for other deer. And that's the thing, as hunters, we have to duplicate and mimic a real animal. So I like to make some of my thrashing noises and then maybe a branch break and then stop. Pretend I'm a deer, look around, everything coast is clear, yada, yada. Then I'll do my next sequence, whether it's rubbing on a tree or trying to emulate the sound of a buck making a scrape. But I always am very, very, very minimal, and you just got to consider less is more. So now I appreciate, and I really try to get myself into the mindset, all right, I'm a buck. This is my little spot I'm hanging out in. If there's another buck around, I want to really sell it. I want to sell it that I'm a real animal and antagonize any buck that's a dominant buck that's around here. And when I say antagonize, that's the way you kill these big bucks and pull them into your locations. Is it's not through hard, forceful calling. It's through specific minimal antagonization where you literally tease them. You drive them freaking nuts. And instinctually, they are forced to get up out of their beds and come and investigate because they want to know what is going on over there. Do I need to defend my territory? Is there a hot doe? It drives them crazy. And absolutely. It makes them vulnerable. And it's the same thing is true with humans, dude. People make stupid mistakes when they're angry. So do bucks. And so that's how I've been calling all these years, is trying to antagonize these deer. And it's not just my philosophy. That Tyler Tish is a good friend of mine. He hunts around here. A lot of these different beliefs and strategies that I've come up with them have been things I've heard from other hunters too, who are big buck killers. But we were on the phone or on a podcast with Lee Lukoski, this past, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago or something like that. And Lee's got, dude, let's just face it, he's got some of the best ground in the world. And so when we were talking, I couldn't tell, I haven't been able to tell anybody about tree thrasher for a couple of years. So it's just been driving me nuts not to be able to talk about it. But until I figured it out and the patents and everything were in place, I just had to keep my mouth shut. But we were talking with Lee, and I just asked him, I said, how a lot of guys like to rattle and you see it often, but I found that it doesn't work for me. How often do you rattle? And he said, we hunt 100 days a year. And he said, I might have rattled 2 or 3 times this season. And he said it really wasn't even for a buck. It was more for something to do on a spot that just wasn't good and just trying to get footage, see if we can call one in. And I was just like, finally, somebody told the truth. And that's Lee hunting thousands of acres of unmolested properties. Like, these guys are not killing these monsters by rattling them in every year. Yes, every once in a while you might be able to. In certain circumstances, like for me, if I'm going to rattle or would rattle, it would be more in open areas where it's more believable, where there's not as much timber, not as many leaves around. So like big open CRP ground, Kansas type terrain, that's the terrain where rattling really, really works well. And I think in Texas, it's the same situation. Rattling works great because they just don't have the other sound. So they can sell it a lot easier. But here in Iowa, man, you're sitting in the middle of the timber. You touch those antlers together, in my opinion, you might as well bring a blowhorn up in the tree and yell, "Hey, come on over, boys!"
Same here, as Todd knows. In Michigan, the rattling thing's been done 100 million times, and they just know. It's again situational. We both know it works that 0.001% of the time. But you guys are going to run a few episodes or an episode shortly here, right? Showing how the product works. And this is just my honesty. We're going to be showing some episodes coming up that shows all the testing. Like literally the first time I ever used a prototype in the field and like look at the camera going, I hope I'm not going to spook deer with this thing, But the big one I shot, he came in while I was actually doing my interview. Right as I had just climbed up in the tree, it was like 1:15 in the afternoon. So I was just doing my interview. I looked up and here he came. But I killed a giant 8-pointer earlier in the season, right next to a bedding area where I thrashed just before I left in the morning. It was late in the morning, like 9 o'clock in the morning, which is late for me. So just before I left, I'm like, I'm going to just make sure. So I call it a clear out. I want to clear the woods, so to speak, before I leave. And so I always like to call, and that's when a lot of guys rattle or make a lot of noise. But I just do a small thrashing session, and I like to either start it with a grunt and then wait 30 seconds to a minute before I thrash, or I'll do a thrash session and then wait 30 seconds and then do one single grunt. And it basically just sends the message to those animals. They put 2 and 2 together. They hear the noise. They hear a grunt. They know what it is. You're not a hunter at that point because you don't sound like a hunter. Nobody's ever used this tool before. So I've called in as many does with my tree thrasher as I have bucks. It calls all animals, which was the biggest surprise to me, especially early season. I really used it a lot in a lot of ground blinds just because early season, that's just where the deer are. And in the early testing phases, dude, I didn't know if I was going to use this dang thing, start making these noises and get snorted at. I had no idea what I knew what the deer reaction was, but until you test it, you just don't know. So I went out and did a ton of testing, and we have everything on video that shows the reaction of the deer to this stuff. But it's designed as a blind calling tool. Basically, you see a deer, that's not the time you thrash at it. If a deer is visually able to look at your direction and clearly see that, a hunter in a tree thrashing or whatever, it doesn't work. And I don't like calling at deer that I see anyway, because generally that means they're pretty close quarters. And a lot of times that's when you'll just educate them or they just hang up. You call at them and they
start coming in and they'll hold up at 40, 50, or usually about 50 to 80 yards, and they'll just stop and they'll look. And if they don't see that visual confirmation, they will not come in. And at that point, you've just been duped. They have your number. And so you can either make it worse by keep calling at them, or you let them go and kill them a different day. But you're not blowing them out of the area, and you're not making them wise to your situation, by educating them at that point. But like with the tree thrasher, the way I've been using it, I do it very minimally. And we've had a few negative comments, and I knew it was going to come, because with any new products, you're always going to have people who are going to, be naysayers. But some,
especially us in the hunting side of things, we've all been victimized to calls like the nutcracker or nut cruncher and the every other call.
Oh gosh, and with calls, I mean, dude, we've seen so many. Yep, and that some people are calling it the acorn crasher, pixie dust, and I'm like, no, that's not what it is, man. I mean, it's just another tool, and there's some certain situations where I don't use it. Where I'm in where certain bedding area spots or spots where I can't see quite far enough. If it's really, really tight, then I don't like to call at all, other than maybe a grunt, just because your likelihood of getting busted goes up if you can't see. There's a perfect balance between being able to see too far and not far enough. But that's what I like about it, is you can make the different sounds dependent on your situation, and maybe just throw a couple footsteps in with a grunt as opposed to a 30-second thrash session. And then other areas that are a little more open where you can see things for a distance, you can get a little bit more aggressive. But again, less is more. You got to tease them and get that into your mindset.
And the right moment, and being on guard, so to speak, both ways. Before you use it, learning how to use it, and after the fact. The one thing I think that I've realized 5 years of calling, it's about the technique, and that's about when I started killing these big mature deer that I had been unable to kill before. A lot of it is does are a huge factor. I'll tell you, I've killed a lot of bucks because they came in following a doe, or a doe had just been through that area. And what I found with my calling, usually when I do in a thrash session or grunts or both, and I do that minimalist approach every 20, 30 minutes, usually it's about 5 to 10 minutes after I'm done calling. All of a sudden, here comes a group of does, or here comes a single doe or a small buck. Those deer are social, so the animals, if you have animals coming into your close proximity to your stand, that's all good, because bucks want to be around does. It's natural bait, basically. So I want deer around my stand all the time. The sound of those other deer make it okay for a big buck to come through there. Or if a buck is bedded nearby and they hear a deer that comes walking through, move through, they know it didn't snort, they don't hear it stomp. Okay, the coast is clear over there. It must have been that other buck that I'm hearing. So it just sends the message that the coast is clear, and it just increases your odds of seeing a big mature buck, period. We've spoken a little bit about what you're just saying, Todd, and timing and stuff like that. But one reason I like it is we focus on mature deer that we believe are living on our properties. But the cool thing I love about it too is it's going to help with that deer that just comes across the property, maybe from the neighbors, or a deer but doesn't live on your property. Talk about intrigue. It's going to make him kind of just want to come investigate and maybe come out of some cover that he normally wouldn't come out of.
And there's a few other factors, and another huge factor in calling animals successfully without getting busted is you've got to stand still or sit still once you're done calling. You've got to pay attention, but just movement. I see guys. When I start hunting and filming different people, it really becomes apparent how much people move. But for many years, I had some big buck killers say the same thing. They're like, a lot of guys just freaking move around too much, and those deer, man, those big bucks, they move a little bit and they stop and they look and they listen, and then they move a little bit and they stop, they look and they listen. And so especially right when I'm done calling, I used to say with Kyle in the tree, we called it statue, the old game we used to play with kids, where, all right, we're done calling, and literally you don't move your head, you just stand there. And a lot of times I'll stand after I'm done doing those calling sessions, because those deer will come in from a distance, stop, look, and listen. they will pop you in your stand. I mean, that's just the way it is. So I like to keep my calling sessions really short for that reason, so that you're not putting a lot of sound out there for a long period of time, because that just gives them a better ability to key in on your exact location. And if you give them a minute for them to move a little bit and see if they can see, through the timber or past that brush, you don't want that situation. You basically want to tease them, leave it alone, sit still, let them come to you, and just don't overdo it. And as soon as you start to see those deer every 5 to 10 minutes after your calling sessions, you'll start to realize, like, okay, I get it. Less is more. It actually becomes fun because you're just toying with them. Now you can really look at calling in a different way, and not trying to force everything, but just trying to antagonize them, try to tease them into range, and it works on all deer. And I had one of the coolest promo segments in Tree Thrasher I filmed last year was I was sitting in a beautiful little bedding area spot, kind of an open CRP area, right adjacent to a doe bedding area, and it's just a killer little area. I've had a lot of killer encounters over the years there, but first morning in, starts to get light. Everything around me, I could, even as I was walking in my stand in the dark, I could see trees that were thrashed and scrapes that had just been opened up. So I thought, holy cow, this could be a good morning. So right about first light, about 10, 15 minutes in, I decided to do a thrash. So I did some thrashing, and I did a single grunt like I always do just after, and put my tools up, sat still, and boom, all of a sudden a doe pops out. I don't know, maybe it was probably 5 minutes to 10 minutes after. Pops out right in front of me. She walks through, and 2 seconds after that, 10 minutes after that, whatever it was, I forget, here comes a buck. And he was following right on her scent trail where she came, and he ended up coming in and thrashing right below my tree at 10 yards. And I got everything, just the most coolest footage. And it was just like, my God, he came, he heard it, she heard it. She came that way, he was following. And it just, boom, it was another encounter where I was just like, man, there's really something to this tree thrash. I mean, throughout the season, I had to talk myself into using it because, dude, I mean, the whole point in the past had been to completely blend in and not let your presence be known. Not call. And so it felt a little goofy, I'll be honest, the first few times. But then as I started to use it and started putting myself learning, like, okay, 5 to 10 minutes after my thrashing sessions, boom, all of a sudden, that's when I'm seeing deer. I'm like, okay, I get it. And you just can't overdo it. But I called in a ton of different deer, and even you don't need a tree to make the tree thrasher work well. I actually have had some of my best experiences out of ground blinds with it, because you don't have to worry about movement nearly as much. Obviously, you can make a little bit more ruckus, and let's face it, there's a lot of scrapes usually on those field edges and on those kill plots. So it just sounds like, okay, there's a deer in there. And sure enough, 5 minutes after my thrash sessions on these food plots, boom, all of a sudden here comes a doe. It amazed me that does were so attracted to it, but they truly are.
And I know I'm super excited about that too, being this call is so universal that it communicates with the does as well as the bucks. And it's just a universal call that is small and handy.
Well, me too. And for, so much time and money and energy has gone into getting it just to the product, just ready to release into the market. But I've been the only one using this thing. So I'm just dying to get, a bunch of these out in the field and start hearing the stories, and then, taking the next step in developing the next better tool, based on what our customer feedback is and what people are seeing and what our own experiences are. But I know it works. The sounds that you can produce are just, as closely as humanly possible to mimicking the real thing. And trust me, just to get the branch breaker sound, my God, I must have broke 10,000 branches, and then you go in the timber and every branch sounds different. If it's a dead branch, it sounds louder. If it's a green branch, it doesn't sound it. But what the true beauty and the real secret for the Thrasher is that, just like an orchestra, you can take a horn out or a flute out and make one noise, and that's only so powerful. But the layering of those sounds together, it sounds so realistic, like a buck really making a thrash in a tree, that it works. I mean, it just plain works. But that's the secret, is you got to be able to layer those sounds together. But again, just like any calling, I don't do the same thrashing session 2 or 3 times in a hunt. Every time is different. So I might do a little bit more of a tree thrasher, aggressive type call around prime time. And then leading up to that, I want to first be the deer that's there. So I do like a walking deer with a single grunt. Then the next time I do it, maybe I'll make it sound like a buck is walking, breaks a branch, and then makes a scrape, but all short sessions. And each time I do it, I always want to change it up, because the last thing whitetails are is consistent in the noises they make. You think about it, every deer that thrashes a tree or makes a rub sounds different every single time.
Oh man, that is so true. Every deer, it really does have his own personality. Sometimes they're going to come up to a licking branch, and instead of doing their antlers, they're going to rub that orbital gland. And sometimes they're going to, paw the ground with, their hoofs first, and then rake their antlers in the tree, so to speak, or maybe make a rub. So it's again situational. It's based on that deer, and that's kind of what you're preaching with this call is change it up, keep using it in different manners. And I definitely cannot wait to get my hands on one and use one this year, even though I haven't touched one yet, but I'm super excited.
Well, I'll get you one. I'll get you one ASAP. We're we just started our production's been in process, but I just got the first samples 2 days ago, and we're going to have a shipment leaving our manufacturer on Tuesday of next week. So that'll put it here at the end of the week, hopefully, maybe the beginning of the next. And make sure you shoot me an email if you would as a reminder in about a week, and I'll get you a tree thrasher out to test, because I'm just as curious. Brandon's been a good buddy of mine for a long, long time. And dude, you've hunted all over. You've killed some giant deer, even in Michigan, which is like unheard of. And so I'm really curious. And I have had quite a few people ask me, well, I live in Pennsylvania, or I don't have 10-year-old deer running around, or 7-year-old deer, or 6-year-old. There's always a dominance in your woods, no matter what, whether the dominant animal is a 2-year-old or a 10-year-old. The same thing holds true. If that animal is dominant in that area, you're going to antagonize them with the presence of another buck. And I would just say, I've watched a lot of small bucks make a hell of a lot of noise over the years. They're just as angry and aggressive that time of year. If anything, they're a little bit more aggressive. They're hyperactive, I guess I would call that. And you got to realize they're trying to be the bad man. They're trying to be like like the buck that they hung around with in the summer. The bucks I'm trying to kill. They're trying to emulate that. They want to be the man. And so it's just like a bodybuilder at the gym flexing in front of the mirrors. It's all about pumping themselves up, getting themselves excited. They're all, their testosterone's going through their freaking roof. So it's something that's an exciting time of year for them as well, because they only get that 2-week period or whatever to have all their fun of the year. If you think about it, they live and die to breed. So they only have that short period that window of time as well. And so that's where I look at, there's guys who don't like to call it all, and that's fine. For my style of hunting, I am always very careful about not overhunting areas. So when I'm in those areas, I've got the deer already, because I'm in there. Usually first time sets. I try to do that as many times, but I want to take advantage of every one of those hunts I have. Every minute I'm out there, I want to, if there's a deer within range, within earshot, I want to bring them within 30 yards of my tree. And so that's my calling method. Is I want to see every animal that's there, and I'm not afraid of calling. And over the years, I mean, you've seen the bucks I'm killing, and I'm calling the entire time I'm out hunting, whether it's October 1st or December 31st. I am out calling every single hunt, but I'm calling unlike any other hunter around, and I'm doing it in a realistic way that's not over the top.
Another thing I really like about the call, Todd, is I think it just is going to open eyes to education as far as young hunters learning and speeding that development up to where, I'm a slow learner, so to speak, and I've had to put this stuff together over and over, year after year, and I really think this is going to be such a great tool to help educate people.
Well, and the same is true, dude. We've it's more than just a business and producing calls, man. It's my passion. It's what I live for. So for me, I'll put it this way: when you watch we're going to come out with an episode here called The Bucks of Tree Thrasher, where it literally shows the very first times I ever used it and the results that I saw using it. And throughout the season, you're going to see me use this tool a lot. And if you think I would deliberately be doing anything that would harm or decrease my odds of killing some of these animals, you're freaking crazy. Like, These are my hunts. This is what I work year round for. So there is no way in hell that I would be selling a product that I'm not going to use myself. And in fact, I used it all last season, throughout the season, and I ended up killing 3 7-year-old whitetails, 2 with a bow, 1 with a muzzleloader. So, like, believe me, it's a part of my calling system. I'm just curious to see where everybody else, what everybody else comes up with, because when we released this product, the first time when we put out the promo video, I didn't know if people were going to think I was freaking crazy or if they were going to think I was a genius. And that's been a very scary thing for the last couple of years, I'll be honest. It's not a black and white product like building a saw or building a tree stand. There's a lot of, it's a subjective thing. But when guys started private messaging me, calling me, emailing me, and telling me what they've been doing, I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm not the only one, I guess. Some really big names in the industry are telling me they've been bringing tree branches up in their stand and breaking the branches on the trees and taking Ziploc baggies full of leaves up in their tree. I'm like, dude,
Hey, no joke. I have one of those baggies.
So, dude, it just cracks me up because I'm like, for all this time, you never heard anybody talk about it, or there's no product like it on the market. So I didn't know if it was because people didn't like it, or it just nobody had thought of it or been able to figure out how to put it in a small package, basically. And so it's been quite reassuring the last couple of weeks after we finally let the cat out of the bag to start hearing some of these stories. And now the orders have been piling in, and I think we're going to probably sell out of our first order before it even gets here. So it's exciting, and it's still.
And again, like I was saying, one thing I know about Todd is this won't be the first and only generation of this product. Todd is going to keep honing it in until it's ultimately perfect.
Oh, it's a journey. It's something that we'll get. We're going to get a nonstop. I'm going to be nonstop developing, newer versions of this based on, our own experiences. And I'm always trying to make things better. So I can't wait to get out in the field this year with the brand new version.
No, for sure. And I think if I haven't said it at least 5 times, this will be 6, but I'm excited to use it, and just absolutely the versatility of it is I'm just so excited about.
Well, the cool part about it is you can't screw it up. You can't mess up with this call, because like we were talking about earlier, every time a buck makes a rub or a scrape or whatever, it always sounds different. Sometimes you don't even hear it. It's very quiet. And other times it's so loud, it's like, it's blatantly obvious. They're trying to make as much noise when they're making a scrape. They're not just trying to clear the ground and pee in it. They're trying to let all the deer around, let them know that they're making a scrape. It's very obvious, so, but you just got to use it smart, use it minimally, just like what we talked about, and be very still in between your calling sessions. But you really can't screw it up. And I like to make little weird popping and clicking sounds with the tool itself, like just by tapping it on the tree. Those are the sounds that deer make. It's just these weird sounds of antlers on saplings and trees. And, you can't screw it up, basically. The only way you can screw it up is by overdoing it.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. That's, a given with any call. You can't sit there and hit the antlers together every 5 minutes and expect herds of bucks to come running at you, so to speak.
Yep. And nope. And every year, dude, with the amount of time I spend in the field, in as aggressive of a hunter as I am, some of the spots I'm hunting, I'm putting myself in the middle of the action. And so I have deer downwind of me, and ozonics is a huge factor for that. But at the same time, you put yourself in those situations, you're going to get busted visually. I get popped in the tree constantly because I'm hunting in just ridiculous trees, dude. I killed Walter Payton this year, my biggest buck ever, 8 feet off the ground. But I was in the spot that they had never been hunted, so I could get away with more. But, I get busted just like anybody. You just try to minimize the amount of times you get busted, and, you hope that it's not the buck you're after. But, if you're going to put yourself in position to kill these big deer, a lot of times you just have to take chances. And so tree thrashers are part of my system. I'm not going to go out in the woods and use it in every set for 20 minutes straight, every 20 minutes constantly. But I'm a teaser, man. I've learned how the power of antagonization works, and tree thrasher is just another tool for that. And it works great and doesn't take up much room or any weight. So you can pretty much, it replaces a pair of 3.5-pound rattling antlers that are such a pain in the neck to try to get out in the field quietly. And then once you're up in the darn tree with them, just to hang them or do anything, they're just a bear. Not to mention kind of dangerous if you're climbing trees with those things on your back.
Oh, for sure, man. To get rid of, a big, heavy, clunky set of rattling antlers that always make noise, that are pointy, large daggers that if you did fall or something like that, obviously you're going to get hurt. So to condense that into a small, lightweight tool like the tree thrasher, super excited to use it. I mean, that's just anytime we can do something like that, and that's part of this podcast, is always to make us better hunters, and that's why this product is intriguing to me, makes us better, and gives us more versatility.
Yep, and the best way to describe it is the leaf noise. People we've gotten fielded a lot of questions about, well, how much noise does it make? What is the leaf noise? The call is made to duplicate the sound and the sound levels of the real thing. So the leaf sound is almost exactly the same as dried oak leaves, and literally that's what I tried to mimic, is the sound of big timber, really dry leaves, crispy leaves, and then the amount of sound you make is just based on how quickly you pull the two parts of the tool apart, which basically has an accordion of this loud material that makes the leaf noise. So it's all about the cadence, and then the speed, and then the distance you're pulling the call apart to make the leaf noise. But the reach out and get your attention factor is that branch breaker. That noise is unmistakable to an animal, especially even hunters. When you hear a branch break, that indicates a large-bodied animal moving in the timber.
No, I talk about that quite a bit, at least thought-wise, and we think of communication as, I heard a grunt or I heard this. Well, walking on the leaves, on top of leaves, making that sound, them making a rub, them making a scrape, and all that, and even the tickling of the antlers against sticks, that is natural sounds they hear just all the time, and that's stuff we really take for granted of.
It's just so natural. That's the sound. That's the sound a deer makes every 10 seconds of its life, essentially, when it's on its feet. There's people who love the can call and have used it successfully. I've even done some bleats and called in different bucks with it. But, in all the years of hunting, I don't really honestly recall ever hearing a doe bleat like that. I've heard fawns, looking for mama, meow, meow, meow. But those tending grunts and those location grunts are so quiet, you can almost not even hear them. I've never heard a deer. I've heard some deer croak and growl a little bit, but not over the top. And snort wheezes are the same thing. They were a popular thing a few years ago when all those calls came out, but I hear a snort wheeze far more often than a rattle, but it's still not that common. Bucks don't walk around snort wheezing all over. So to me, I think guys have just overdone it. They've educated the deer. So I just want to call in a way that has the least likelihood of sending up caution flags. I want to send up curiosity flags. And so that's just basically where the tree thrasher came from, was just creating those natural noises deer are used to hearing around them and hearing in association with a live animal. And then you throw that one grunt in with it, and it is absolutely, it's like stealing candy from a baby in the world of calls.
It definitely is. That is funny. At least thought-wise, that's what I'm believing. I'm excited to use it. And I know you guys, you have some video coming out, correct, Todd?
Absolutely. I think next week we're going to be dropping an episode called The Bucks of Tree Thrasher. We've got one of the best episodes we've ever produced, for sure. The Walter Payton story is on right now on our White Knuckle Facebook page or our White Knuckle Productions YouTube channel. And we've got some footage of the Tree Thrasher prototypes. I've gone through about 12 different concepts to get to the final product. And so some of the Tree Thrasher prototypes you'll see me use in our videos don't look like the final product, but they made basically the same noises. And then I was able to just, what started out basically as two different calls, I was able to morph and combine into one single call that did all the right stuff in a super simple way. Because in the world of product design, sometimes it's not a matter of producing a product, but it's a matter of finding a way to do it simply. And then be able to sell it at a cost-effective price and not have a $500 call. And the other thing is it's 100% mechanical. There's no electronics or wires or anything like that. So it's legal in all the states. And I'm just duplicating what Native Americans have been doing for tens of thousands of years with moose antlers up in the Yukon, calling moose. It's just been a little bit trickier to do it in whitetail woods, but I would be willing to bet back in the day before hunting industry, I bet you Native Americans were calling using a variety of these types of tools in their arsenal as well.
It's funny, but that is super true. And those guys, the Native Americans, man, they could hunt their butts off. But Todd, give us a little info on where we can find this at.
TreeThrasher.com is our website. We also have a Facebook page as well, but we're selling initially just direct only, so you can only buy it from TreeThrasher.com. And we are going to be shipping in the next week. So we'll have product out there. If you place a pre-order right now before we get our final product, we're offering free freight. So it retails for $39.99. So it's not cheap, but at the same time, it is what it is. It's expensive to produce anything that's brand new in the way that this is made. It's a very complicated way to make it. Unfortunately, it was difficult to produce, but the final product is so simple. It's just absolutely wonderful. So it's worth $40. Trust me, you'll get a lot of use out of it. And if you ever have any issue whatsoever, like anything we do, we take care of our customers.
And you know what we should do, Todd, as well, is I don't think we've been on the show together during hunting season, so we need to get back together here in the next month or two and give an update on the tree thrasher.
Absolutely. Let's do it. We can kind of do a tree thrasher recap and see what we've all learned to that point. And hopefully we both have a couple giant deer down that we can talk about.
I hope we will both definitely be tagged out, Todd. Also, hey, man, I wanted to say before we get off here, congratulations, you and the wife, on the announcement of your baby. Super excited for you guys.
Oh, thank you, dude. We're very excited, too. It's been a busy year, man. This summer, just getting everything ready for tree thrasher and the baby and hunting season. Holy cow, I'm tired, man. I'm ready to go sit in a tree.
Definitely, man. You're due for some time off and some tree stand time, and good luck to you, man.
Hey, thank you so much, Brandon. Appreciate the support and good luck, everybody out there. Wear your safety harnesses, use safe lines, be careful out there, people.
Speaking of which, Todd is right. It is Safety Awareness Month, Tree Stand Safety Awareness Month, so please wear your harnesses. And guys, every week, you can find us live on iTunes, podbros.com, Outdoor Podcast channel, and now on the Unfiltered app as well.